not from. I would just like to start by thanking our YouTube audience for the comments that you send and for the financial help you give us. We don't see you, we can't see you from this side, but we know you're there, and we appreciate every time you respond to a program that we publish. And I happen to think that this message that I give, and it's not my message, it's a message I've tapped into, but I know how to give it, I know how to represent it. It is one of the most important things that any of us can come across. And that's because it starts with us. It starts with me, the individual, you, the individual. If we are feeling weak, if we are spiritually unclear, if we are spiritually uncertain, if we're not centered in our center of power, and we're trying to draw all of that from outside of ourselves, we're not doing what we came here to do. And so that's what we want to do. We want to get back to this center and to focus on God within us, the Lord our God, that is our source of power, our source of strength, our source of understanding. And sometimes we find this difficult to do, which I believe is why the majority of the religious community is not drawn to a message like this. They want someone else to do all this for them. They want to feel like if they just go to church, if they just tithe, if they just read the Bible, if they just listen to whatever religious authority is out there, that they're fulfilling their end. But what they are really doing is giving up the gift that they are. They're giving up their own center of power. And they're saying that someone or something outside of themselves is the authority, is greater. So very few people have found this inner path. There's a lot of people that talk about it, but very few have actually found it. And we know that we have not yet found it if we're in a situation where we are running away from a problem rather than standing firm and facing it. And it's a very natural thing to run away, which is why I like this statement from Emilie Cady. It is perfectly natural for the human mind to seek to escape from its troubles by running away from present environments or by planning some change on the material plane. There is no permanent or real outward way of escape from miseries or circumstances. All help must come from within. What I like about this statement, what I like about Emilie Cady, is she acknowledges that tendency in all of us to run away from rather than to whatever problem we're facing, whatever issue we're facing. She did it herself. Her father was exiled from this country for what she said was just a lot of lies told about him. And she hired attorneys, she did all kinds of things to get him back. And nothing worked until she finally realized that this was God's problem, not hers. And the moment she had this realization, and you know when you have a realization like this, when something in you changes, you go from this kind of quivering, fearful person to one who knows things are going to work out. You may not know how they're going to work out. But in a sense, when we seek outside help, when that's our first choice, we're running away from the problem. We're running away from the answer, I should say. And that doesn't mean that problems aren't solved by external things. But our personal problems are not. And what is our personal problem? You're in a situation now and you are terrified. Your personal problem is not the thing out there. It's your terror. It's your response. It's how you're feeling right now. This is what we want to overcome, and this is really the only thing we have to be concerned about. Because when you manage to truly release your terror, your fear, you'll see your situation in a totally different way. You will replace your human self with your God self. You will suddenly have the strength to know everything will work out, is working out now. And we're not talking about inaction here. We're talking about an extra action, a first action. And that is addressing our inner quality of life in a way that we can actually change it. We can actually do something about it. So it is natural to seek outer help when we're in trouble. And that's what she's saying. It's perfectly natural for the human mind to seek escape from its troubles by running away from present environments. The present environment we're running away from is how we're feeling, at a heart level, at a soul level. We're trying to resolve that through something in the external world. That's perfectly natural to think somebody out there can help me. Somebody must help me. I don't think I can do this on my own. And that's probably true, that we can't do it on our own. So do we call in another person or do we call in God? Do we find our center of power or do we find someone else who has found theirs and utilize them? Because if we're doing that, we will always be dependent. And somebody will always have something that we need. And so we will always look to them first for our answers. And we find those are usually limited, that they will run out. But God is always present. This center of power that we all have is always present. And we can never lose it. So while our knee-jerk reaction to almost every problem is to look outside to see if we can find somebody that can help or something that can help, it's important for us to pull ourselves within. I can't tell you how many times I had to remind myself of this through the whole church thing, up really to the sale of this property. Our church, was taking a nosedive. And for you'll come and you'll see there are fewer people, the offering's down and all of this thing, but this is my livelihood. This is what I do. And so I look at it from a different perspective than most of you, I'm sure. We have a board that looks at it in a very concerned way, but if the whole thing dissolves, everybody goes about their business. I've got to find another job, like pumping gas or something. I don't know what I would do exactly. I'll go out and help these guys. But for several years, this church has been teetering. And I've looked at it, I have been fearful, and then I have pulled my power back, found my center of power, and I've been fearful again, pulled back. Just goes back and forth. It's a never-ending lesson to remember. And when I pull back and I find my center, I say, well, this is fine. Where we are is fine. We've got an excellent base, a good place to build from. We're in a very strong position right now, thanks to the sale of the property, and thanks to you, because you have all remain steadfast in your support for us because you want this place to be here. But what I'm telling you is I'm speaking from experience, and this is just one of my experiences in this area. I know what it is to be afraid. I know what it is to feel like everything is crumbling and life as I know it is coming to an end, and I don't know what to do about it. I know exactly how that feels. I also know what it's like to have stepped into a way of life that teaches there's a different way to handle it. And so I think sometimes it's necessary to go through things as a reminder of how to handle life's issues from a spiritual perspective. And I guarantee you there are many times when I thought maybe it would be better if I did leave, if I wasn't here. But there was always something in me that said, no, that's not true. That this is something that you must ride. You must understand. You must use. You're not here on this planet to be the minister of Unity of Grand Junction. You're here as a spiritual being, waking up to your power. And what better situation could there be to help you wake up to your power than one that would say you're powerless? What better teaching method? If you want to build up your muscle, you lift weights. If you want to build up your spiritual muscle, you confront a challenge. And you confront it from a spiritual perspective. Otherwise, what does this mean? What does this whole thing mean? I can fall back on this idea that Jesus died for my sins, and yes, I'll suffer through all of this, but in the great hereafter, I'll be fine. I'm more interested in the great here now, because I can't imagine us being able to escape that. Have you ever tried to escape the present moment? We do it all the time. Let me just see the hands of people that have tried to escape the present moment. I did. I was doing this 10 minutes ago. Let me see the hands of those of you that have succeeded. But we keep trying, don't we? And why is that? When do we get off of that treadmill? When do we start actually practicing what we know is true? That I'm here in this moment and I'm having a certain experience. Do I have anything to say about that? Do I have any control over that? Do I have any control over what I'm thinking and feeling? Or is it all up to whatever is happening? It's very easy to throw the controls over. We were having trouble with the security video this morning. I got here late because I got hung up on ministerial work on texting, of all things, texting somebody to help. And so we had to spend some time doing that. And I don't like to be late because I feel like I'm 3 steps behind when I am. And naturally I get here and nothing works. Nothing works. And so we got to figure all that out. And it's real easy to wish you were somewhere else. When just all those little things, computers, they can drive you nuts. They can make you wish you could get out of this now moment and be somewhere else. If they're working perfectly, that's great. You're glad to be here. But we can do that, and we can do that easily. And that's a very surface thing. I'm being a little bit facetious here because these are the kinds of things that they knock us out of our peace of mind, 1,000 times a day. But we keep coming back. That's the important thing, is we keep coming back to our center, to our anchor, because we know what it is. We know where it is. Jesus turned over a few tables in the temple. Remember that? Is that a good example? You want to follow Jesus? Let's all turn over tables in temples and, make whips out of leather straps and beat on people. Let's do that. If we follow him, what part of him are we going to follow? Are we going to follow that human part or the part that everybody declares is the Son of God? Well, he had both. I think that's important to remind ourselves that he was one of us. He had his moments. So we have our moments. But it's the big picture. It's the quality of life overall that we're interested in. We all fall down. We all get angry. We get sad. We get frustrated. But that doesn't define us. We don't want that to define us. We know more. We know there's something more. Sometimes a change of circumstances is good, and we don't want to discount that because it's true. Sometimes where we are, we can't grow anymore. I shared a story in my first book, I think, about when we lived up in the foothills in Evergreen, and we had sunflowers on the southern side of the house. We had sunflowers on the northern, shadier side of the house. The ones on the northern side of the house in the shade never got much bigger than daisies. But the ones on the southern side got huge. They were like huge plates. And the elk used to come and eat those. But it was the same flower in a different environment. So there are times when it is good for us to move to another environment, to put ourselves in another situation. We're not talking about, let's just sit on the northern side of the house in the shade and just visualize us being full-blown sunflowers. Because that will probably never happen in that environment. There are times we do need to change. But if we are thinking always, where is the power of the sunflower? The one in the north, the one in the south, comes from the same place. It grows from within. And it's important for us to grasp that, to understand that. To know that, yes, we might flourish more in another environment, but let's start where we are. Let's start here. Let's acknowledge that the power within the sunflower in the north and the one in the south is the same. It's within. Sunflowers can't move, like we do, but you get the idea. That if you think your answer is out there, your power's out there someplace, you're looking away from your source, and that's what I'm trying to say here. Sometimes a change of circumstances is good, but our need for change may be a call to move deeper within to experience our center of power. That's always the first and most powerful response, is find our center of power. Instead of running away, we run to that. We just drop everything, drop all of our concern about whatever's going on for a time. And we pull ourselves into that place where we know who we are, and we feel that life, that potential, that feeling that everything is working out. Maybe not here, but if you get to a point where you can look at a situation that you didn't want, you can look at it through new eyes, and you can say, it's okay. When you reach that point where it's okay, whatever is going on is okay, that you're going to grow through this, you're going to move through this in new ways, you have reached that center of power. And you're basically saying to the circumstance, you can stay, you can go, whatever, I'm okay. And you're coming from a place of power. And that's a very different place. It's a very important place to come from. That's what this whole thing's about. When circumstances appear to be a glass half empty rather than looking for a fuller glass, which we normally do. That's what Cady's talking about. We'll want to consider filling our glass just as it is. And I like this illustration because it's a good visualization. We've got a glass that's half full of water, and we're saying it's incomplete. I don't like this. I want a fuller glass. So we put the half glass aside, and we go around looking for a fuller glass. But we can take that very same glass and put it under a faucet and fill it up to overflowing. And that's the principle. That this half full glass, this half empty glass, however we're viewing it, that's how we're feeling inside. And what is the water fountain? It's that center of power. It's that contact with God. It's that inner knowing that I don't know how this thing's going to work. I don't know how this glass is going to get filled, but I've got a glass and it's half full. And so I only have to fill up the other half. It's not a big deal. And we look at it from a totally different perspective. We look at it from a point of view of strength rather than one of weakness. So it's a good illustration, I think. Working with conditions at hand, we begin filling our life. Stop cursing your life. Stop cursing the circumstance, the person, whatever it is that's in your life. Stop, because you're labeling that as a thing you must then overcome. So that's a new problem. It's a problem God doesn't have, by the way. God doesn't have to overcome a problem personality or a problem situation because God is all. It's already done. It is finished. Rather than resisting our conditions, we start blessing them and asking how we can give more of ourselves to fill them. And again, that's a very important thing. I've shared this story, and some of you have not heard it, but when I was, another lifetime ago, I was working with a family construction business, which I did not like doing at all. And I would show up wishing I was someplace else, even somebody else, just not really wanting to be there in that job, on that job. But I started getting into this unity thing, started reading Cady, started realizing that I used to travel 60 miles to visit Unity Village, to go to the Sunday service there. And I loved it. I loved going there. I loved being there. And I started asking myself, why do I feel so much better there than here? There being Unity Village, here being working on a construction site. If God is everywhere present, why would I feel better there than here? And I began to realize that God is omnipresent, as much here as there. And what was changing was not, the closer you get to a place, the more dense God is. That's not omnipresence. My thinking was changing. My emotions changed. My anticipation changed. I changed. So was it possible for me to be in a situation I did not like and change? And so I made a commitment to myself, and I began showing up before everyone else did on whatever job we were looking at, usually a house. And I would sit down and I would be still, and I would meditate, and I would open myself to the presence of God. And I gradually began to experience that whole situation in an entirely different way. I began to see the people that would show up, subcontractors, whatever, that would show up for the whatever work they were doing, as messengers. Completely different from how I was viewing them. Usually one of them shows up, you think, oh, I don't want to talk to this guy. But as messengers, and the whole thing was taking place in the presence of God. I never would have imagined I would be able to make that kind of a change in myself. But I did. I proved to myself that I can be in a place, a state of life I do not like. And I can tap into the omnipresence of God, the omnipotence, all power. And what's interesting about that is it was not very long after I began doing that that my whole life changed. And I entered ministerial school and all of that. But it's almost like you have to make peace with where you are first before it lets you go. I don't know if that's true, but I think it is. Because what if the thing you don't like, what if it's okay? I don't care if you're here. It's not my problem. What if you have that attitude? The quality of your life is immediately elevated. When I started going onto the job and changing the way I felt, I was taking control of my ability to have a good experience. It's a simple thing. It really is not a simple thing. Because I did not think I could do that. I did not think I could actually have a change of, why would I ever like this? And that's another thing that we do. We say, I don't want to make this thing think I like it because it won't go away. If it thinks I like it, it's not going to go away. But you can love things out of your life. You can like things out of your life. You can pray things out of your life. And not intentionally. It's just that when you get to the place in yourself where it's okay, the thing will go. Because you have stepped off of the level that binds you to that experience. You've risen above the level that binds you to that experience. And when the moment you do that, the experience is free to flow on, because that's what life is. It's a flow. And when we are stuck in something, it's, as I've used the illustration before, it's like going down the river in a canoe, throwing a rope around a stump on the bank and hanging on to it and saying, this river is really giving me a hard time. You know, it's not the river. The river's just doing what the river does. And if you will let go of the rope, the river will carry you where you need to go. It's not, hard physics. It's a spiritual principle. We say let go, we try to put things out of our mind. That's not the same thing. It's actually getting to, you let go when you're at a place where it's okay. Whatever this thing is okay. And again, in the history of my 16 years, our 16 years of being here, I've reached that place many times where you think, what good does it do to worry about something? It just makes me sick. It ruins my experience. And what if I'm able to say, how many times have I been here and survived it? Gotten through it, something different has unfolded. That's the way it works. And as long as you're hanging onto that rope and the river's beating you up, you've got a problem. And that problem is the hanging on. But I proved to myself many times, and I feel like I can stand up here as an authority on this subject because it's life. It's what happens in our life. We're either hanging on or we're letting go. And to let go just doesn't mean to try to put it out of your mind, try to pretend like it's not there. That's the sticking your head in the sand syndrome. It's putting the thing on the table right in front of you. It's going to the job and meditating on the job. Going before you get paid on that job, with the intention of rising above whatever problem you're having with it. Put it in the light, and you'll solve the problem. You won't solve it. you don't solve the problem on its own level. You know, on the level of the level of the problem I was having, you go to the job, I hate it, I don't want to be here, I'm going to be here for 8 hours, so for 8 hours I'm going to be unhappy. I'll be happy when we drive off. I'll be happy on the weekend. I'll be happy when I'm in church. I'll be happy, you know, when I'm anywhere but here. But we truly gain power over it when we step into it. It's right there in front of us, and we're okay with it. That's what we want. That's what the spiritual thing is about. Jesus prayed for his disciples not to be taken from this world, but to overcome the evil one. And what is the evil one? It's me. It's my perception. It's how I'm defining a thing. God is everywhere but here. And that's what we want to take a look at. And we're doing like the Rams, beating our heads against whatever. You may think you're giving all you can and your situation just keeps demanding more. Maybe you're feeling drained because you're giving against your will. See, that's trying to think positive. That's what I have against the whole positive thinking movement. Let's just think positive and it'll go away. It'll change our lives. Well, it helps sometimes. But I have seen people that try to say all the positive things, try to do all the right things, but there's still something in them that's hanging on. It's like they're using positive thoughts as a ball bat to beat away this evil thing. And that's not what it's about. Positive thinking is an effect. It is the result of you coming to your center of power and saying, I'm going to sit on this job, I'm going to meditate here until I touch this deeper reality, until I overcome the reaction I'm having to this situation. You can go to a job you hate, you can go to a situation you hate, and you can affirm all day long positive thoughts. You can stick things on your refrigerator, on your medicine cabinet, on whatever, wherever. You can memorize all this stuff. But until you put it right in front of you and say, this thing is not going to control me anymore. I'm going to become okay with it. Then your thinking becomes positive. You don't even have to try. You get excited. It builds your enthusiasm. Stop denying how you really feel and begin giving from the basis of that is true. And that just means if you're not liking something, that's the not liking it, that's not how you feel. You don't like it because you have a deeper feeling. A feeling that I want to be free of this. And how do you become free of this? You put the thing right on the table in the light in front of you until you can look at it and it doesn't sway you one way or the other. You're okay. It's not really that hard to do. In fact, we don't really have a choice. And we don't want to go along to get along. That's one of the worst possible things we can do. That's the positive thinking guy that pastes a smile on his face and just tries to look like everything's great, when inside it's not so great. I have known people through the years like this, and you just sense there's something missing from this. It's a real conviction. It's a real understanding. It's a facade that they're wearing. It's positive thinking. If you're trying to think positive, you're going about it backwards, because your thinking is an effect. It's an effect of the reality you touch within yourself. You get to a point where you look at this thing and you're okay with it. It's okay. Then you can think about other things. You can think about anything you want. You don't feel some obligation to not like this thing, to fight this thing, because you have reached a point in yourself where you're okay. If you're going along to get along, you're not really giving out of who and what you are, and the situation or relationship suffers because of it. Pour the full force of your being into your present circumstances. Top off the glass that is yours to fill. When it's full, you may decide you want to keep it. Well, I'm still here. And I'm glad I'm here. I can't think of any place I'd rather be. If that changes, I'll let you know. But it hasn't. And it's like there's a temptation to run away, to go somewhere else, to be somewhere else that we think might work better. But as I have said many times, wherever you go, who do you take with you? I don't know about you, but I usually take myself. And the self that has the problem here will have it there. Okay? It's a pretty simple thing, and it just requires commitment. You can take any problem that you have and solve it today. You may not work out all of the issues concerning the problem in the outer. It doesn't matter. But when you can put it on the table in front of you, look at it and say, I'm okay, and this is working out, then you've solved your problem. All right? Just that simple. Thanks for coming out, and we'll see you again next week.
You've been watching a talk presented at the Unity Church of Grand Junction by Reverend Doug Bator. We would like to thank everyone who joined us here today in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado, as well as those of you who are joining us online. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. Also, please feel free to share this video with anyone you think might be interested or benefit from this message. If this video brought value to your life, please consider making a donation by clicking the link below to our PayPal donation account. Thanks again so much for watching.